Two sketchy criminals desperately try to run for their lives, but these dumb-ass losers are waiting for the elevator instead of just running down the stairs. These men are human traffickers, and their entire operation has been busted down by an unknown assailant. One of the men gets shot down and his partner barely manages to get inside the elevator. However, he sees the masked man who was sent to destroy the traffickers, and the criminal starts pissing his pants because the assassin is a legendary hitman known as Fable. In fact, just a few moments ago, the leader of this trafficking circle was shot down in his own hideout, and the remaining lowlives knew this was the work of Fable. Now all they can do is cower in fear and pray to make it out alive, but Fable is locked in. He casually scales the entire building and catches up with the criminals who are running away. As soon as the trafficker comes out of the elevator, Fable shoots him in the neck. These aura-less people really think they can somehow overtake the assassin, and they all decide to jump Fable. However, things do not end well for the criminals because Fable ruthlessly shoots them all down. But Fable grabs on to one guy and uses him as a human shield. Fable shoots at his targets relentlessly and both of the criminals fall to the ground. One of them is barely alive, and in his final moments, he wants to know about Fable's identity. However, the assassin does not care for the unnecessary glazing, and he shoots the guy once more. After completing the mission, Fable gets in a car which is being driven by his beautiful assistant. He doesn't mention anything about the mission, but he starts begging the girl to turn on the television. Even though his request is annoying, the television gets turned on and Fable goes from professional killer to little man child. He can't stop laughing while watching his favorite show about a man called Jackal Tomioka. The woman driving the car gets a little annoyed because Fable just killed several men, but he is acting like a 3-year-old child. But Jackal just tells her to shut up and drive. The show continues to blare as Jackal does weird shit and Fable laughs at every stupid joke. The car then stops at the docks where Fable gets rid of his gun, and then they drive away to a secret location. Fable's life as a professional assassin is not very glamorous because he and his assistant have to hide out in a small warehouse along with the boss who assigns all of the missions. The boss praises Fable for his hard work as a killer, especially since they had quite the busy year. Fable is usually tasked with killing high-profile personalities. This is why the missions require a lot more skill and pay a good amount as well. Fable has been doing this job for 6 years, and now the boss believes that it is time for them to take a break. Since Fable has killed too many people in a single year, the boss has decided that they will halt all operations and keep a low profile in order to avoid suspicion. Fable and his assistant are surprised to learn that they will be receiving a hefty amount of money in order to start their new lives in Osaka. The boss has Yakuza connections in the area, and they will help Fable and his assistant acquire completely new identities. Fable seems a little disappointed by this sudden change of plans, and he wants to know why the boss picked Osaka. Since Fable wants to be the #1 hitman in the world, the boss believes it is important for him to learn how to adapt to a new environment. Fable needs to experience a normal life as part of his training, and it is important for him to live like a normal human being for once. The boss also threatens to kill Fable and his assistant if they kill anyone during this break. The following day, the assistant arrives at Fable's depressing apartment so that they can start their new lives together. She finds it interesting that Fable has only packed one bag for his belongings and one for the money. The girl then shows Fable his new, fake driver's license, with his new fake name, Akira Sato. Fable finds the name interesting, but he is more focused on hiding guns in random-ass places. As Fable puts a gun in the microwave, he asks his assistant for her new name. The boss thought it would be funny if the girl pretends to be Fable's sister, so her name is Yoko Sato. Fable finds the thought of having a sister slightly disturbing, but he is still amused by it. Fable continues to empty out bullets and gun barrels from strange objects in his house. It seems like everything in his apartment is actually just part of a gun. Yoko has to remind Fable that he is not allowed to bring any guns with him. The assassin is aware of that, and this is why he is gathering his arsenal for the boss to collect. However, there is one special gun, the Nighthawk, which Fable is not willing to let go. Yoko warns him that the two of them could get in trouble, but Fable is oddly attached to this gun, and he keeps it secure within an old boom box which he intends to bring with him. Yoko is already fed up with her fake brother, and she warns him to deal with the consequences if the boss catches wind of the gun. After getting things sorted, Fable and Yoko start their journey towards Osaka. Yoko is the one driving, but she is feeling a little chatty. She wants to know why Fable decided to become an assassin. Instead of answering the question, Fable flips the conversation, and he gets Yoko to start yapping about her life. Yoko explains that when she was 10, Her parents died in a house fire. For some reason the boss took her in and taught her all manner of skills, but then he appointed her as Fable's assistant and driver. Despite learning more about his fake sister, Fable still does not share anything about his own past. The two continue to drive and they stop at a gas station. As soon as they leave the car, Fable spots two car burglars hanging around in the parking lot. These guys seem really suspicious, so Fable decides to stay behind while Yoko uses the restroom. The assassin sits at a nearby bench and he observes the two criminals as they decide which car to hijack. In his mind, Fable is already aware of how a criminal would be thinking in this situation, and he low-key wants the burglars to mess with his car. However, the two men turn their attention towards Fable himself, and they start approaching him. Fable immediately tells the men that he is not looking for violence, but as soon as they try to touch him, Fable slams them both in the throat. The criminals fall to the ground and Yoko arrives on the scene just in time to witness Fable being a badass. She is shocked that Fable couldn't even go one day without hurting someone. The two quickly get back into their car and drive off immediately before anyone else notices. Yoko is mad at Fable and she wonders if he plans on living a normal life by killing everyone he meets. As an assassin, Fable can't help but rely on his instincts, and he is starting to realize how difficult this break is going to be. Yoko continues to drive towards Osaka as dawn slowly lights up the sky. She asks Fable if he knows the local dialect, and surprisingly, Fable is well versed in 5 local languages. She then informs him about the Yakuza Maguro group who is going to be helping them settle in Osaka. The leader of the clan, Hiroshi Hamada, and his captain, Takeshi Ebihara, are the only ones who know about Yoko and Fable's situation. After thoroughly schooling Fable about the Maguro group, Yoko has to watch the professional assassin literally kick-start his brain so that he can speak the local dialect. The process is embarrassing, but it works like a charm because Fable sounds like he belongs in Osaka. Before meeting with the Maguro group, Yoko takes Fable to a clothing store because his edgy black shirts are not going to cut it in a sunny place like Osaka. Meanwhile, the captain of the Maguro group, Ebihara, voices his concerns about working with a dangerous killer like Fable. Despite listening to his captain's warning, Hiroshi does not intend on taking Fable seriously, which is definitely going to bite him in the ass later on. Ebihara and Hiroshi continue to discuss whether it's a good idea to harbor a psychopathic killer. Ebihara tries his best to convince his boss that they should not work with Fable because he's a complete psycho. However, Hiroshi reminds his captain that they need this relation to work because the group has relied on Fable's expertise in the past. In fact, Hiroshi recalls a chilling event where Fable killed several people with single shots to the head or the heart. The kills were cold and precise, which is exactly why Fable is treated like a legend. Ebihara wonders how a person like that can eat and sleep, but Hiroshi believes that killing with a gun makes it easier for the assassin. Fable probably does not harbor any trauma from his actions because he kills with a single, impersonal shot. It is easy for him to just go back home after killing people and then eating a hamburger like it's a regular Tuesday night. Despite Ebihara's reservations, he has to meet Fable and Yoko as they finally arrive at the Yakuza's office. The two leaders of the Yakuza are expecting a hardcore Giga Chad with an intimidating vibe, but they get stunned when they see Fable. He is dressed like your average gullible tourist, and even Yoko looks very friendly. Ebihara has a hard time accepting that the man sitting in front of him is truly Fable. He then proceeds to ask the assassin if his name really is Akira Soto. This type of normie conversation is too much for Fable, and he can't help but be rude and awkward. Yoko has to constantly stop Fable from saying the wrong things, and even Ebihara warns him. The captain of the Maguro group then asks Fable how he would kill everyone in the room in this exact situation. This is exactly the type of out-of-pocket question that gets Fable excited because he casually shares that he would use the gun Ebihara is carrying to kill him and his boss. Even Hiroshi had no idea that his right-hand man was carrying a gun, but somehow Fable figured it out and also got the model right. Ebihara then asks Fable how he would take care of the 10 men outside, and the assassin tells the guy that he would just use the gun that Hiroshi is carrying. The leader really finds Fable amusing, but Ebihara is worried that they have a monster amongst them. He wants to know how Fable discovered that they have guns, but the pro does not reveal his secrets. After the awkward conversation, Ebihara and Hiroshi set some ground rules for the newcomers. They don't want Fable and Yoko to cause any sort of trouble or accident. The Yakuza will not help them if something goes wrong. They also threaten to kick out the fake siblings if they cause too much trouble and draw attention towards themselves. The meeting comes to an end and Hiroshi instructs Ebihara to escort Fable and Yoko to their new home. Before leaving, Fable mentions that Ebihara has a nose hair sticking out. This is exactly the type of yapping that could get them killed, and Yoko is left in complete distress at Fable's remarks. Later on, Yoko and Fable follow Ebihara in a different car. On the way, the girl reminds Fable that his big mouth could cause them a lot of pain, but the assassin thinks that he's just being normal. He didn't mean any harm by mentioning the nose hair. Fable and Yoko finally arrive at their new residence, and it's nothing impressive. The building looks like a hideout used by criminals, and surprisingly, that is precisely what it was used for in the past. Ebihara then shows the pretend siblings his old-ass car, which is rotting away in the garage. The man is very proud of his ugly vehicle, and he warns Fable and Yoko not to touch it. Ebihara then wants Fable to demonstrate his legendary shooting abilities, and he tells the man to strike down the security camera. In his haste, Fable ends up shooting the wrong corner of the room, and he takes down a different camera, but that doesn't matter to Ebihara. He is more upset to see that Fable's sloppy skills have dropped dirt and debris on his precious car. Yoko quickly takes control of the situation, and she uses her riz on Ebihara to calm him down. She promises to clean up the car and make it spotless again. Ebihara actually falls for the trick, and he starts blushing like a little girl. Once the man leaves the siblings alone, he orders his subordinate to keep an eye on them no matter what. Ebihara can tell that both Fable and Yoko are quite clever, even if they try to act dumb. Fable now has his own place, but his killer instincts are not on vacation. He goes around the small apartment and pulls out every hidden camera left by the Yakuza. After making sure that the apartment is camera-free, Fable heads to the rooftop and enjoys the fading sunset. He looks at the sky, and he even notices a beautiful girl rushing towards her home in a nearby apartment. This is the first day of Fable's new life as a normal person. It will be hard for him to let go of the violent killing and shooting that he has done over the years. Those memories are also very precious to a psycho like him. Meanwhile, Ebihara's subordinate, Takahashi, is still monitoring the siblings from outside, but he can only see Yoko's camera feed. The perv stares with wide eyes as the girl changes out of her clothes and gets into the shower. Thankfully, Ebihara gets into the car after his man is done jerking off. He tries to hide it, but Ebihara is already annoyed at the incompetence of his subordinate. Even though Hiroshi wanted Ebihara to leave Fable and Yoko alone, the man is determined to chase them out of town. Takahashi asks a lot of questions as well, but Ebihara tells him not to look too deep into the siblings. Ebihara simply wants his man to create trouble that will get Fable and Yoko kicked out of Osaka. Meanwhile, back at home, Fable is sitting butt naked as he does maintenance on his only gun. His attention then gets caught by Jackal Tomioka appearing on the television screen. Fable is just like a distracted toddler, and he starts laughing like a maniac. Thankfully, Yoko calls Fable and invites him for a night of drinking. The two head to a nearby bar where they celebrate their new lives. Yoko is determined to make the most of the opportunity, and she wants Fable to start learning how to be human as well. She wants Fable to engage in some hobbies and do something different, but the assassin isn't really open to the idea. Yoko continues to push Fable into getting a hobby, even something as small as playing video games. The assassin flips the conversation, and he asks Yoko if she has any plans. As expected, Yoko is going to find true love on this vacation, but she needs Fable to keep his instincts in check and not kill her future boyfriend. Outside the bar, Takahashi has called a Muay Thai kickboxer to beat the shit out of Fable and scare him away. As Fable and Yoko leave the bar, they get hounded by the kickboxer and his friend. All the while Takahashi is watching from a distance. The thugs immediately try to pick a fight with Fable, which could jeopardize his new identity. Instead of immediately just killing these bozos, Fable tells Yoko to leave because if she got hurt, then he would actually have to kill these idiots. Once Yoko heads back home, Fable pretends to take all the punches, and he acts like he is in great pain as the smaller guy tries to hit him. The entire time Fable is anticipating the other guy's moves, and he expertly holds him off by not lifting a finger. The kickboxer tells his friend to back off, and then he steps in to beat Fable. As expected, Fable is familiar with the kickboxer's fighting style, and he knows exactly where and how the guy is going to land his hit. The assassin lets himself get punched in the nose to make his acting more believable. He even starts begging for the criminals to stop. People on the street are starting to take notice of the fight, and then the kickboxer receives a signal from Takahashi to stop and leave the scene. Fable stays on the ground pretending to be a helpless victim. A familiar woman stops by to offer him some help, but he refuses. Fable has seen this woman before from his apartment rooftop, but he doesn't say a word. Meanwhile, the kickboxer and his friend receive a measly 5,000 yen each for their intimidation tactics. Takahashi really thinks that this pathetic display of violence is going to be enough to scare Fable away, but the assassin himself is actually starting to enjoy Osaka. Ebihara receives word about the assault on Fable, and he is hoping that this small skirmish is going to scare the assassin away. However, he is also intrigued to learn that Fable immediately started begging for his life and was badly hurt during the fight, which seems uncharacteristic for someone as legendary as Fable. Ebihara is definitely starting to act on his own, and he visits an old dealer to acquire new bullets for his favorite gun. Even though things have been slow for the Yakuza lately, Ebihara feels uneasy about Fable's presence. Meanwhile, Fable has made it a habit to sit around completely naked in his apartment. He prepares for the night by creating a false body in his bed and then passing out in the bathtub. At the same time, Ebihara drives around all night firing bullets from his gun. Takahashi has no idea why his boss is acting so crazy, but Ebihara does not offer any explanations. The following day, Fable once again finds himself enamored by a Jackal Tomioka ad blasting on the television screen. He then receives an interesting message from his boss telling him to get a pet. At first Fable is not interested, but then his excitement soars when he sees that the boss has sent him a jackal sticker. Fable shows this message to Yoko, but she completely ignores the stickers. She wonders why the boss is so adamant on Fable getting a pet for himself. The man literally thinks that an earthworm will make a great pet, but Yoko shuts down his idea. Since this matter needs to be settled, Yoko offers to take Fable to a pet shop. However, she receives a message from the boss as well telling her to get a pet, which means that both Fable and Yoko have no choice but to venture out into the world and find a pet for themselves. Later on, the fake siblings head to the market where Yoko tries to find some curtains for herself and Fable gets distracted by a cutout of Jackal. The duo then look around a pet store where they inspect all manner of creatures. Fable isn't really interested in any of the animals, but then he notices a parrot that reminds him of his special gun and he offers to buy it. However, when the assassin turns around, he notices that the kickboxer's small friend is lurking nearby. Takeshi's annoying minion Takahashi has hired the kickboxer once more, and he is waiting outside to jump Fable. Instead of starting a fight, Fable lures the smaller guy away from Yoko, and then he completely disappears. The kickboxer and his small friend try to search for him, and they spot Fable in the parking lot. Since Fable needs to pretend to be a weakling, he immediately starts screaming as soon as he sees the menacing duo coming towards him. The kickboxer and his friend chase down Fable throughout the entire area, but the assassin is just as fast as hell. Fable is actually trying to use a tactic where he leads the criminals into an endless chase so that they become too tired. The trick is already working because the smaller guy has already given up, and the kickboxer has a hard time keeping up. Even though Fable stops from time to scream like a banshee and pretend to be scared, his assailants are nowhere close to catching him. Eventually Fable jumps down a bridge and the kickboxer is unable to follow him any longer. Instead of going back home, Fable returns to the pet store and continues talking with Yoko as if he never left. Yoko has decided to get a hamster, and she informs Fable that the parrot he wants is really expensive. Since Fable is in a good mood from the chase, he decides to get the parrot as a companion for himself. Once the decision has been made, Yoko searches up information about the parrot online. It sounds like the perfect animal for someone as unpredictable as Fable. The parrot can play on its own when no one is around, and it only eats fruit. Now Fable and Yoko just need to come up with decent names for their respective pets, and they decide to make this crucial decision in the comfort of their own apartments. Meanwhile, Takahashi and the kickboxer discuss how Fable managed to get away, and they can't believe that the guy jumped from a bridge without breaking any bones. Later on, Fable traumatizes his parrot by once again being completely naked at home. He shows the bird where to find food and water, and then he tries to find an appropriate name for his new friend. Fable says certain words to see how the parrot will react, but it shows no preference. The bird then ends up sitting on the assassin's head as soon as it hears the word captain, and Fable realizes that he has found the perfect name. Meanwhile, Ebihara meets up with Takahashi, and this time he wants his subordinate to get close to Yoko. Since Takahashi likes the girl, he can use the opportunity to take her out on a date and learn more about Fable. Ebihara even gives his useless servant some money because he has zero riz of his own. The man gets scared and he wonders if he can really go on a date with Yoko, but Ebihara threatens to kill Takahashi if he fails. Back in the apartment, Fable discovers that Hawk has pooped on his head, so he creates a small sword out of tissue paper and challenges the bird to a duel. Fable wants to see if his bird can keep up, but Hawk has no issues with attacking Fable's genitals and plucking out a pubic hair. This assures Fable that the bird was truly made just for him. The following day, Takahashi continues to spy on Yoko as the girl tries to bond with her hamster. Takahashi searches up information on hamsters so that he can strike a conversation with Yoko, but the information is too much for his thick skull. Meanwhile, Fable is using an exercise machine stark naked in the garage and Ebihara unexpectedly walks in. Since the garage is home to the captain's precious car, he visits occasionally to make sure that the old piece of junk is still running. Despite Fable's complete nakedness, Ebihara has the guts to ask the assassin if he is free at night. At first, Fable thinks that Ebihara is asking him out on a date and he quickly closes his legs to save his remaining sense of dignity, but that is not the case. Ebihara wants to talk to Fable man to man and he is adamant on meeting him at night. This request seems a little forceful, but the Fable has no choice but to accept. Meanwhile, Takahashi also makes his move and he introduces himself to Yoko as an errand boy for the Yakuza. Takahashi informs Yoko that he has been tasked with showing her around town and taking her to all the popular restaurants and bars. Yoko is completely open to the idea of hanging out with Takahashi, even though Fable is not going to be with her. She does not seem suspicious at all, which gives Takahashi a little bit of comfort. Later on, Fable and Yoko talk on the phone about their respective plans for the night. Yoko is hoping to find a nice man for herself, but she is more worried about Fable ruining things and doing something that will jeopardize their lives. Night quickly arrives and Ebihara picks up Fable from his apartment. They talk about cars and how Fable has a special gun that he likes to keep with himself because it saved his life 2 times. Ebihara did not think that Fable was a superstitious man, but he still respects the mindset. Takahashi also arrives to pick up Yoko, but the girl immediately starts judging him silently. She frowns at the fact that his car is not a Mercedes and that it smells really disgusting. Yoko has no idea that Takahashi has been off to her videos in the same car this entire time. Yoko also does not like the restaurant that the man has picked out for her, but she still puts on a fake smile. The night continues onwards and Ebihara takes Fable to a sketchy place where he points at a large criminal hiding in the shadows. It seems like Ebihara is hell-bent on seeing the legendary Fable in action and he wants the assassin to beat the criminal within 6 minutes. Fable is unfazed, but he reminds Ebihara that the boss of the Yakuza told him not to use violence. However, Ebihara has decided to act on his own, and if Fable can beat the big guy, then he can stay in Osaka for as long as he likes. At the same time, Yoko's night out is going pretty smoothly as well, but only because she isn't voicing her complaints. Takahashi has no idea that Yoko hates everything about his choice of restaurant and she isn't enjoying the date at all. Instead, the foolish guy believes that he can truly fall in love with Yoko just because she is smiling at him. Fable's night is also a little rocky because the criminal he is fighting is out for blood. The Yakuza has promised to forgive all of his debts if the big guy manages to bring Fable down. Ebihara on the other hand witnesses Fable's stupid ritual of switching his brain so that he can lock in for the fight ahead. It doesn't take long for Fable's killer aura to take over and he rushes towards the criminal with the determination of defeating him in 6 seconds. Fable runs towards the big criminal as Ebihara watches on in anticipation. He begins the countdown to make sure that Fable defeats the guy in exactly 6 seconds, but it only takes the assassin 3 seconds to leap forward and crush the criminal's windpipe. Ebihara is now fully convinced that he really is dealing with the legendary Fable himself. However, the guy is not willing to stop here. He wants Fable to kill the criminal instead of just bringing him down. Fable is starting to realize that Ebihara is acting on wild assumptions about what sort of person the assassin is. Ebihara remarks that he knew of another assassin who liked to kill people for fun, and he even did the devil's tango with corpses. Fable is low-key insulted that Ebihara would compare him to someone who actually enjoys necrophilia. However, Ebihara is convinced that Fable must be some sort of a deranged serial killer who derives pleasure from killing people. Fable is offended, but he calmly defends himself by stating that he is nothing more than a pro killer. It's a job that he has to do, and there is no element of fun in it. Ebihara calls Fable out for killing hundreds of people, but that number is greatly exaggerated. Fable is slowly losing his patience, and he calls Ebihara corrupt for imposing his own ideals on others. Ebihara's lackey, who is also witnessing the entire interaction, pulls out his gun and threatens to shoot Fable, but it turns out to be a big mistake. Fable manages to grab the gun from the lackey's hands, and then he slams his elbow into the guy's neck, causing him to collapse. Now Fable and Ebihara are both pointing guns at each other, but only Fable has an advantage. Ebihara is too far off for his shot to meet its mark, and he slowly moves towards Fable, all the while mocking him. Ebihara is trying to provoke Fable into using his gun because he wants to justify his own actions, but that is not going to happen. Fable makes it clear that he does not like killing for fun, and that if he wanted to leave, he would have done so by now. In order to show his sincerity, Fable drops his gun and bows down to Ebihara as a gesture of respect. He asks for the captain's permission to stay in Osaka without any violence, but Ebihara is not convinced. He presses his own gun on Fable's forehead and asks him a surprising question. Ebihara wants to know what life means to Fable because he believes that life is a precious thing and that killers like Fable should not be allowed to take it away. Fable has a hard time answering the questions because he doesn't think too deeply about his own life. However, he tells Ebihara that he recently got a cute parrot for himself and he wants to take care of it and give the bird a good life. Fable also mentions that he decided to call the bird Captain because that is the only word he reacts to. This simple answer prompts Ebihara to lower his guard and accept the fact that Fable is not a deranged serial killer. Ebihara then shoots the criminal on the floor because that guy had done horrendous things and he would have been a menace in the future. Even Ebihara's lackey is left confused and surprised by the turn of events, but he is more impressed by Fable. The lackey introduces himself as Kuro, but Ebihara scolds him for even daring to speak to such a legend. From now on, Fable will live in Osaka without being disturbed by anyone and Kuro has been ordered to stay away from the man. As Ebihara and Fable leave to get some dinner, Kuro realizes that he really did meet a legitimate hitman for the first time. Meanwhile, Yoko and Takahashi end up going to an expensive bar. In his mind, Takahashi is trying to budget his expenses, but when he sees how excited Yoko is to try out some drinks, he decides to spend all of his money on her. For some reason Yoko is being very casual with Takahashi and the poor guy thinks he has a real shot with her. After some time, both of them are completely drunk, but Takahashi has also lost a couple of brain cells along with his soberness. Yoko takes the opportunity to make fun of Takahashi, but she actually finds the guy a little cute as he moves around in a drunken haze. Fable and Ebihara have also found a nice little restaurant where they can eat meat. As the chef prepares the food, Ebihara asks Fable if he got rid of all the cameras in his apartment. Fable confirms that he pulled the cameras out without destroying them and that Ebihara can have them back. However, the captain is more interested in learning why Fable didn't remove Yoko's cameras. According to Fable, he feels a little at ease knowing that someone is watching over Yoko, since he can't be with her all the time. Now it is Fable's turn to ask a question, and he wants to know why Ebihara decided to lose his shit over Fable so quickly. The captain explains that his brother is going to leave prison after serving 15 years for a murder. Ebihara only wanted to make sure that someone like Fable wouldn't interfere or ruin the moment. He simply wants to celebrate this new beginning with his brother. Fable does not say anything, and then he tries to eat a hot piece of meat, but it burns his mouth and he cries out like a child. Meanwhile, Takahashi is throwing up in the bathroom, but Yoko keeps encouraging him because she has a thing for pathetic guys. As Yoko observes Takahashi in his drunken state, she can't help but find him completely adorable. In fact, she seems a little too excited about how weak and pathetic Takahashi is, and the two end up going home together. Fable and Ebihara are also wrapping up their night. Ebihara mentions that he is still not going to trust Fable completely, and he will kick the guy out if he stirs up any trouble. Fable promised to live a peaceful life for at least a year. He is already thinking about picking up a new hobby to occupy his free time. Ebihara is horrified to learn that Fable wants to go down the path of a degenerate video game addict, and he quickly tells the assassin to do something more productive with his time, like getting a part-time job. This thought didn't even cross Fable's mind, but getting a job sounds like a good idea. Meanwhile, Yoko brings Takahashi to her apartment and lets him sleep on her floor, but she is not done teasing him. She treats the guy like a sick animal, and she derives pleasure from seeing him bump into furniture and make a fool of himself. When Yoko notices that Takahashi is falling asleep, she quickly strips out of her clothes and tempts him to move forward. As expected, Takahashi tries to squirm his way towards Yoko, but he keeps getting tangled up in other shit, which makes Yoko laugh out loud. Ebihara drops Fable back home, and on the way, they see a girl running as if she's in a great hurry. Fable remembers seeing the girl before and Ebihara informs him that the girl's name is Misaki. She lives close to Fable and works 5 jobs in order to pay off her parents' debt. The girl also plans on opening a flower shop in the near future, which the captain greatly supports. Ebihara tells Fable not to get involved with nice girls like that because it will only cause more trouble. Fable, on the other hand, doesn't show that much interest, and then he bids farewell to Ebihara. As the lone assassin returns home and greets his parrot, he can't get the idea of a job out of his mind. This might be the perfect next move for Fable in his new life. The following day, Ebihara returns back to the office and Kuro informs him that their boss Hiroshi wants to see him. Hiroshi has caught wind of the incident with Fable, and he warns Ebihara not to act so recklessly. According to Hiroshi, Fable works for a mysterious organization. If Ebihara had shot Fable, then it was likely that the Yakuza group would have been hunted down. Hiroshi then asks Ebihara to be careful when his brother Kajima is released next week. They don't want any more trouble with Fable. Meanwhile, Takahashi wakes up at Yoko's house, but he has no recollection of his embarrassing behavior from the night before. Fable is also wide awake, and he receives a message from his boss telling him to watch a soap opera. When Fable tunes in, he is surprised to learn that Jackal is in the show as well, and this makes him very excited. Takahashi also finally reports to Ebihara, and he apologizes for his bruised-up face and late appearance. From now on, Fable and Yoko will be left alone and Takahashi is ordered to work with Kuro instead. Back at home, Fable is completely engrossed in the soap opera. The female lead is a dense idiot who refuses to let go of her toxic man. Fable doesn't really care for the plot, but he gets excited every time Jackal is on screen. At the same time, Takahashi takes Kuro to the bridge where Fable jumped from. Both of them are still marveling at the fact that Fable survived the fall, and it further fuels Kuro's obsession with the hitman. He is even stupid enough to jump from the bridge as well, but of course Kuro only ends up breaking his legs. Fable informs Yoko that he has decided to get a job, which makes his fake sister very happy. Meanwhile, Ebihara is cooking at home when he gets a call from Takahashi informing him about Kuro's stupidity. Ebihara picks up Kuro from the hospital, and on the way, he tries to understand why the guy would jump from the bridge like that. The minute Ebihara realizes that his stupid subordinate is trying to be like Fable, he violently grabs Kuro's face and tells him to stop acting like a hitman. According to Ebihara, people like Fable are the dregs of society, and the work they do is horrible. There is no way Ebihara would allow Kuro to follow a similar path. Later on, Yoko gives Fable a dreaded job application, but he has no idea how to fill it out. Fable ends up taking the forms back home, and he starts jotting down everything that he is good at. Since the man has worked as a delivery driver in several warehouses, he decides to apply for a similar role. For his first job interview, Fable finds himself being interviewed by a man who runs a used clothes business. Unfortunately, Fable can't help but be himself, and he completely ruins his chances of finding work at this specific company. Fable's next job interview is a complete failure as well because the guy keeps laughing at his resume and the fact that Fable's birthday is listed down as April Fool's Day. As luck would have it, Misaki runs into Fable, and she recognizes him as the guy who got beaten up by the local thugs. Misaki takes pity on Fable, and she offers to accompany him to his next job interview since they are headed in the same direction. Misaki also looks over at Fable's resume, and she realizes that he could actually work for her current boss. Fable ends up following Misaki into a small office where he patiently waits while the girl talks to her boss. Fable meets Takoda, the president of this small business. He runs a small design business and Misaki works for him as a designer. Sometimes they need to deliver posters and flyers in person and Fable could be useful for that job. Takoda is pretty straightforward, and he lets Fable know that his pay is going to be shit, and since Fable is now known as the crybaby who folded to some lowly criminals, Takoda does not think that the guy has what it takes to be a delivery driver. However, Faber quickly accepts the position regardless of the insulting income. Takoda is surprised to hear this, and he welcomes Fable to the team. Meanwhile, Kuro and Takahashi are dealing with some shady business for the Yakuza, but only one of them is actually doing the work. While Takahashi boxes adult films, Kuro can't stop fantasizing about being a hitman. He promises to one day become a legendary hitman who lives a dangerous but luxurious life. Later on, as Ebihara leaves his favorite restaurant, he receives an unexpected phone call from Fable. The assassin wants to inform Ebihara that he got a job which would place him in close proximity to Misaki. Ebihara cannot believe this, and he encourages Fable to change his job before he ruins the girl's life, but Fable has already made his decision. Back at home, even Yoko is surprised that Fable would take such a low-paying job, but she is more curious about Misaki. Yoko wonders if Fable would ever fall in love with Misaki and start a workplace romance. This idea is foreign to Fable, but he is still open to starting such a romance. When he goes back home, he continues to watch the shitty soap opera just for Jackal. The plot of the show makes no sense, but Fable still finds the entire thing amusing. The following day, Fable shows up to work super early and Takoda is surprised by his eagerness to get started. As the rest of the workers slowly arrive, Fable can sense that there is already someone in the office who has a crush on Misaki. Another exciting development has also occurred as Ebihara greets his brother Kajima now that he is out of prison. Fable is trying his best not to crash out at his new job, but when Takoda shows him the bike that he will be using to make deliveries, Fable is on the verge of giving up. Meanwhile, Ebihara has a small celebratory lunch with Kajima, but things are a little awkward. For starters, Kajima is not allowed to drink right now because he will be meeting the boss later on and Ebihara needs him sober for that. Kajima has a hard time understanding that the Yakuza has mellowed out and that the group is much smaller. Ebihara warns his brother not to start shit with the group, and he even offers to eventually turn his brother into one of his men. After the lunch, Ebihara and Kajima come across Fable on his delivery bicycle, and even without exchanging a word, Kajima starts hating on the guy. However, Fable on the other hand is completely oblivious and heads back to the office after making a delivery. Takoda is surprised by Fable's ability to make a delivery so quickly. The guy doesn't even look tired and he's not even sweating. Takoda and Misaki are glad that they hired someone as reliable as Fable, and they decide to throw him a welcome party. Meanwhile, Hiroshi meets Kajima and gives him 3 million yen for basically doing nothing. Kajima accepts the money because he is used to being a freeloader and he promises not to cause any trouble. Later on, while Ebihara is cooking in his apartment, Kajima makes fun of his methods and then he asks about the apartments which were meant to be used as a safe house by the Yakuza. Ebihara does not offer too many details, but he tells his brother that those apartments are being leased out to Hiroshi's relatives. Ebihara really wants Kajima to take things easy, but the guy is already thinking about getting a car and a gun. For now, Kajima decides to stay put, but it is clear that his agitation is growing stronger. Later in the day, Fable and his new co-workers go out for drinks to celebrate the new hire. Takoda talks like a complete boomer, and he tries to make Fable feel good about his low salary by mentioning that back in the he used to earn even less. Fable takes no offense, and while he is eating, he accidentally drops a piece of food. When Fable leans down to get it, he notices that Kainuma, the other designer in the company, has a video camera pointed right towards Misaki's skirt. Fable mentions nothing, but he understands that Kainuma is a complete creep. The conversation continues and Misaki and Takoda want to know more about Fable since he has really strange eating habits. Fable only shares that he remembers being left in the mountains with a knife and ordered to come back alone. Fable's casual trauma dumping shocks the rest of his coworkers, but he doesn't find it strange at all. Misaki tells Fable that he doesn't need to reveal anything more about his painful past. The girl actually starts crying randomly because of her passionate nature, but she immediately stops when Fable bites into a chicken bone completely unfazed. No one realizes it, but Fable is only eating the bone so that he can use a small piece to flick Kainuma's camera away from Misaki's legs. The celebrations come to an end and Misaki has to leave because she has another job. Since it is late, Kainuma offers to walk with Misaki to ensure her safety, but the creep has other bad ideas in mind. Meanwhile, Fable and Takoda end up going to another bar together. As Kainuma walks next to Misaki, he notices her keys in her backpack and in an effort to steal them, he offers to carry the bag. Misaki is a little reluctant, but Kainuma is just too forceful. Once the girl arrives at her next workplace, Kainuma gives the bag back and Misaki does not realize that her keys have been stolen by a pervert. As the night progresses, Takoda takes Fable to a bar where the bartender is a woman who is only referred to as Mama. Takoda introduces Fable as a crybaby, but Mama has a hard time believing that someone who looks so intimidating could be such a wimp. Things only get more interesting when Kuro arrives at the bar as well with another friend. The guy doesn't notice Fable sitting at the bar, and he continues to act rowdy and edgy. Mama has to warn Kuro not to make too much noise because of other customers, but Kuro doesn't take her seriously. That is until he notices Fable sitting at the bar as well. Kuro immediately straightens out and punches his friend for making too much noise. He is scared shitless by Fable's presence, but he is also having a fangirl moment and he wants to really talk to his idol. Instead of just being normal, Kuro starts glazing himself loudly in the hopes of catching Fable's attention. However, this tactic does not work because Fable and Takoda are engrossed in their own conversation. Takoda really wants Fable to learn a martial art or join a gym in order to get stronger. Since Fable is now part of the company, Takoda is going to treat him like family and watch after him. He also tells Fable to stop eating weird shit like edamame skins. As soon as Kuro overhears that Fable likes to eat edamame skins, he grabs a handful from the table and stuffs them down his throat. Fable catches wind of this and casually tells Kuro not to eat those skins since they probably have preservatives. Kuro spits out the disgusting shit and his friend starts making a lot more noise. Takoda wants the two bozos to quiet down, and when Kuro's friend hears this, he starts pumping himself up for a fight, but Kuro scolds his friend for starting a fight with a respectable man. Kainuma uses Misaki's keys to enter her house. As expected, the ugly-ass freak goes through her underwear and starts sniffing that shit like it is cocaine. Kainuma rifles through Misaki's personal stuff, and then he makes a surprising discovery. Misaki has a magazine in her room which is full of pictures of her as a swimsuit model. This magazine is a goldmine for the degenerate, and he excitedly takes pictures. Fable returns home, and after greeting his parrot, he pulls out an old knife which triggers an intense flashback. Fable recalls how he once used the knife to cut down a worm and eat it raw. The disgusting memory fades away as Fable is pulled out of his memories when his phone starts ringing. Misaki is on the other line, and she really needs Fable's help. It turns out that Misaki has been locked out of her apartment, and she was hoping that Fable would be able to help. As a pro assassin, Fable can break into the lock easily, but he needs to keep a low profile, so he pretends to be useless. Fable offers to let Misaki sleep at his apartment, but the girl politely declines the offer. Instead, she wonders if Fable's sister will be willing to let her stay for the night. Fable and Misaki then find themselves confronting a very drunk and smelly Yoko who has no idea what the hell is going on. Despite being slobbering drunk, Yoko invites Misaki to stay the night, but the poor girl has to deal with the antics of a drunk person. Yoko teases Misaki and continues to squish her face like a stress ball. Once Yoko falls asleep, Fable apologizes to Misaki for having to put up with his deranged sister, but Misaki herself is only grateful for having a place to stay for the night. Meanwhile, Takahashi arrives at Ebihara's residence, but unfortunately Kajima opens the door. At first Takahashi has no idea who Kajima is, but when he makes the connection, he apologizes for the intrusion and quickly offers his respect. Kajima invites Takahashi in and informs him that Ebihara is taking a shower. The intimidating older guy offers Takahashi a beverage, and he decides to ask for some tea. But this decision displeases Kajima and Takahashi ends up settling with beer. Things escalate when Kajima beats up Takahashi for sitting without permission. He can tell that the new generation of Yakuza lack any sense of respect. Kajima continues to bully and intimidate Takahashi, all the while ordering him around. All of a sudden, they hear a strange noise from the bathroom and Kajima gets up to investigate. Takahashi gets a little worried, and when they open the bathroom door, Ebihara is on the floor completely still. While Fable enjoys his brain-dead soap opera, Ebihara is taken to the hospital. Kajima informs Takahashi that the captain had a heart attack. He wants to know if there have been any recent changes in Ebihara's life which could have been a source for the illness. Takahashi mentions that the captain has been more stressed out ever since some distant relatives of the boss moved into the area. This piques Kajima's interest, and he wants to know more. The following day, Kajima informs Hiroshi about Ebihara's condition. While the boss shows his concern over Ebihara's health, he is more worried about Kajima acting on his own, especially since Kajima asks Hiroshi if he can borrow Takahashi for some work. As Kajima leaves the office, he runs into Sunagawa, a member of the Yakuza who runs a call girl service. Sunagawa makes the mistake of taunting Kajima, but the man is completely unfazed by the empty insults. He plans on ruining Sunagawa's life in a more devastating manner. Soon after, Kajima finds himself standing outside of Fable's apartment. He welcomes himself in and takes a good look at the car which was important to his brother. Kajima has no idea why an unknown man like Fable is receiving such nice treatment from the Yakuza. Fable pretends to be ignorant, which only makes Kajima more furious. The man pulls out his knife and starts swinging it around in order to intimidate Fable, but the pro assassin remains calm. Kajima believes that Fable has been a source of great stress for Ebihara, and now he wants the man to pay rent for living on Yakuza property. Kajima even wants Yoko to pay rent, and he threatens to stab Fable if he does not comply. Fable has no choice but to agree, and then Kajima drives off with Takahashi. Meanwhile, Misaki ends up finding her keys at the office, which were conveniently left by Kainuma after he used them. When Fable arrives as well, Misaki shares the good news with him, but the man remains as emotionless as ever. Misaki and Takoda start talking about the previous night, and the old man mentions how he almost got into trouble with the Yakuza. Fable tries his best to come off as weak and pathetic, and he tells Takoda that he got scared from the minor altercation. As the day continues, Kajima finds himself at a dealer's place. This is the same dealer who gave Ebihara bullets for his gun, and now he has to deal with Kajima as well. The dealer pretends to not know anything about guns, and he tries to convince Kajima that he no longer has any interest in such dangerous items, but there is no fooling the old criminal. Kajima catches the dealer's lie because he can tell that the man has been handling guns all day. The dealer drops the act and pulls out a gun which he sells to Kajima for 2 million yen. Despite the hefty price, Kajima decides to buy the gun with a look of terrifying excitement on his face. The day is now slowly fading away and Yoko is finally waking up from her drunken daze. She finds a note from Misaki thanking her for the help, but Yoko only feels bad. She drinks around and sleeps all day like a middle-aged man. Meanwhile, Misaki works 5 jobs and works hard. Instead of reflecting on her bad habits, Yoko calls up Takahashi for another night of fulfilling her humiliation kink. Unfortunately, even a low-life like Takahashi has work to do, and he refuses Yoko's offer as soon as a body lands on top of his car. Takahashi looks up and sees Kajima standing near a balcony. He threw the guy from high up, and now he wants Takahashi to bring him back to the apartment. Takahashi finds himself in a strange apartment where Kajima introduces him to a former member of their Yakuza group. Apparently, this guy wanted to start an illegal business involving women, and he took 3 million yen from Kajima, which still hasn't been paid back. The scared ex-member squirms around with his hands tied and his mouth covered as Kajima threatens to kill him if he doesn't pay the money back. In fact, Kajima wants a hefty 6 million yen, which the guy clearly cannot afford. Even Takahashi is shocked by how unforgiving Kajima is. Meanwhile, Fable is surprised to find Kuro sitting in the garage waiting for him. Since the garage belongs to Ebihara, all members of the Yakuza have access to it, but Kuro is not here for Yakuza business. He calls Fable his sensei and begs the guy to take him on as a disciple. At the same time, Kajima removes the tape from the ex-member's mouth and the guy accepts to pay back the 6 million yen. He promises to give Kajima 3 million yen in cash right now, and then he plans to use his credit card or sell his car to make up the rest of the amount. As the guy continues to yap away in an effort to save his life, Kajima gets bored, and he shoots the ex-member point blank. Blood splatters everywhere and Takahashi is left completely speechless. Back at the apartment, Kuro makes it clear that he wants to leave a mark on the world and become someone as powerful and dangerous as Fable. However, his motivations do not align with Fable's own philosophy, because being a pro-assassin means never being known and never enjoying the limelight. Kuro might receive a harsh rejection from his idol. Takahashi is also going through life-changing emotions, and he finds it hard to breathe with a dead body in front of him. Kajima is the type of killer that Ebihara hates because he sees the act of killing as being cathartic. In fact, Kajima compares killing someone to having sex. He believes that both activities create pleasure. Kajima sounds like an edgy teen trying to sound cool for brownie points, and his words don't make Takahashi feel any better about witnessing a brutal crime. However, Kajima is not done yet because he tells Takahashi to cut off the dead guy's hand so that they can use fingerprints to get into his safe. While Kajima creates more trouble for the Yakuza and himself, Kajima has discovered that Misaki did several erotic photoshoots under a fake name. He plans on using the information to blackmail Misaki into sleeping with him. Kainuma also has camera footage of Misaki that he has been collecting like a deranged pest over several months. He truly believes that Misaki will have no choice but to give in to Kainuma's demands. Meanwhile, Yoko is complaining to Fable about being too much of an ordinary person. She can't believe that the guy will spend his night grilling fish and watching his soap opera like an absolute, unbothered king. Fable likes the idea of slowly adjusting to his new life and being completely normal, even though he has been in connection with the Yakuza this entire time. Yoko then notices Misaki leaving her apartment to rush towards another job. She once again starts to feel bad about her own incompetence, and Fable advises Yoko to get a job as well so that she can enjoy ordinary life some more. In a different part of the city, Takahashi and Kajima dump the ex-member's dead body into the river. Kajima is completely calm and collected while Takahashi is freaking out about the entire situation. Compared to them, Fable is having a chill night in his apartment while he creates a nice sauce to complement his fish. The hardcore assassin then continues to watch his crappy soap opera, which is now centered around Jackal's depressing love life. In order to alleviate her boredom, Yoko is also out on the hunt for another man to humiliate. She goes back to the bar where she got Takahashi drunk, and then she pretends to bump into a good-looking guy. As soon as Yoko makes contact, she turns on her charms so that the guy is left completely dazzled by her. Yoko apologizes and sits down at the bar alone, but she knows that the good-looking guy will fall into her trap. In a matter of seconds, the guy shows up and offers to buy Yoko a drink, just as she predicted. Similar to how Fable pretends to be a weak and pathetic man, Yoko also puts on a show and changes her personality to become sheer and more feminine. She knows that good-looking guys are always on the lookout for vulnerable girls who are meek and naive. Yoko's plan is perfect, but the only problem is that the bartender recognizes her. Yoko only hopes that the bartender is a man of culture who will not shatter her plans for the night. After giving a signal to the bartender, Yoko continues her game and tells the good-looking guy that she got stood up by a friend. She pretends to be someone who is shy while drinking, and this immediately captures the heart of her prey. Yoko is a great actor, and she continues to lay her trap perfectly so that she can humiliate the good-looking guy and find pleasure in watching him make a fool of himself. Yoko continues to flirt, and she makes it known that she has no boyfriend at the moment. She even comes up with a sad backstory about how her parents got divorced and her brother is a sickly, weak man. Yoko knows exactly how to act so that the guy feels more and more comfortable with her. She lets him lightly touch her shoulder, and then she pretends to get scared because she wants to be the type of girl who has never spoken to a man before. All of her little moves make the good-looking guy feel like he has scored the perfect partner for the night. The guy ends up introducing himself as Yuki, and then he starts his personal glazing session, which Yoko does not pay attention to at all. Yuki continues to yap away while Yoko thinks about how much she could care less about this bozo. She then switches up gears and calls Yuki a strong man, which starts another rant from Yuki about his strength and how much he goes to the gym. In her mind, Yoko is making fun of the guy for being so stupid and shallow. She then brings the night to a close by mentioning how late it is. Yuki ends up giving his number to Yoko, which is precisely what she wanted. Before leaving, Yoko uses a little bit more of her riz to make sure that Yuki becomes obsessed with her. The entire time the bartender is completely shocked by the clownery he has just witnessed. Meanwhile, Yoko is proud of herself for finding a boy toy like Yuki who will keep her busy for at least 3 months. The following day, Yoko finds Fable doing weird shit in the garage. He has called Yuki over because the girl has memorized the entire map of the city and Fable wants to know the location of a nearby knife shop. He intends on going to the mountains for some training in order to avoid getting fat. Yoko finds that strange, and she remembers that she completely forgot to tell Fable about Ebihara being hospitalized. She does not know the exact cause, but Fable is concerned to hear such terrible news. Meanwhile, Kajima visits Ebihara at the hospital now that his brother is awake. Ebihara is still pretty sick, and he knows that he will have to stay at the hospital for another month. But he is more worried about how Kajima is spending his time. When Ebihara learns that his brother intends on starting his own call girl services, he tells Kajima not to get involved in such a petty business. Ebihara wants Kajima to wait for a month because he has the perfect business to pass down to his brother. Despite what he promised Ebihara, Kajima turns back on his word and he holds a meeting with Kiro. He wants Kiro to find him a few women to start a call girl service. Kajima expects the women to be good at seducing, and he is counting on Kiro since he is known as a womanizer. At first, Kiro wonders if starting such a business is really okay since Tsunagawa also has a call girl service under his command, but Kajima assures the young Yakuza member that everything is going to work out just fine. Kiro takes his word, and he thinks about all the potential women he can recruit for the service. While Kiro and Kajima are discussing the future of their shady partnership, Fable is working hard at his new job. Misaki is also present, and she is trying to come up with a design for a flyer, but her drawing of a lion feels off. Misaki decides to let Fable try his hand at drawing an animal, and his work is definitely quite unique. Regardless of Fable's complete lack of talent and skills, both Misaki and Takoda like his designs, and Fable is offered to work on the flyer with an additional 100 yen added to his hourly rates. This small victory is enough for Fable to feel good about his life. However, Fable and Misaki have no idea that Kiro and Kajima are about to ruin their lives because Kiro wants to hire Misaki as a call girl. Since Misaki has already worked as an erotic model, Kiro believes she will be a good fit for Kajima's business, and the dangerous man takes a liking to her as soon as he sees half-naked pictures of her. Later on, Takahashi and Kajima sit down to have a meal, but Takahashi is still left shaken by the murder he witnessed. Kajima straight up tells Takahashi to get laid so that he can stop being such a buzzkill. He then wants the man to recruit the girl that he sleeps with for Kajima's own business. Takahashi makes the mistake of asking too many questions, which just makes Kajima even more violent and intimidating. He threatens to kill Takahashi if does not recruit 5 girls within the week. Kajima believes that as soon as they start making money, no one in their Yakuza group is going to question them ever again. Meanwhile, Tsunagawa gets wind of Kajima's actions and he is pissed as hell.